Democracy in 3D. How the EU Democracy Campus reimagined learning for a new generation. It begins with silence. The kind that never exists online. A ring of European flags shimmers in slow breath. Dozens of avatars stand beneath them, quiet, waiting. One raises her hand. She's 19 from Izmir. Her name is Deniz. Her voice travels across the continent. We all want peace, she says. But what can we do to achieve it? A caption appears, in Portuguese, Turkish and English. And for a moment, democracy feels alive. For 5 days, these young Europeans will move through halls and galleries that mirror the architecture of Europe itself. They will debate, translate, disagree and laugh. They will forget that the people they're arguing with live 4,000 kilometers away. And when it's over, many will say they finally understood what democracy feels like. The story began with a statistic that haunted us. In 2024, the Eurobarometer showed that while 80% of young Europeans said democracy mattered, fewer than half believed they could influence it. They trusted the idea, not the system. At REDefine, that gap felt personal. If democracy was built on participation, then the software of participation needed an update. So we asked ourselves, what if young people could step inside democratic systems, instead of studying them from afar? That question became an experiment. A virtual replica of the EU Parliament complex in Strasbourg. A space where democracy could be experienced, not just discussed. We called it the EU Democracy Campus. An immersive world built in VR, accessible by headset, laptop or phone. No downloads, no installations. Just a browser and curiosity. Inside, history, law and emotion were stitched together into one continuous story. Participants could walk through the galleries of history, debate in the Parliament Hall, face ethical dilemmas in the crisis labs, and finish by drafting manifestos for Europe 2050. The goal wasn't simulation, it was rehearsal. Over 6 months, designers, educators and youth workers turned an idea into infrastructure. The galleries began in shadow, then opened into light, symbolizing Europe's journey from war to cooperation. The Parliament Hall replicated Strasbourg's semicircle, every avatar the same height, every voice equal in volume. The Crisis Lab simulated disinformation storms and humanitarian emergencies. The activity rooms became spaces for collaboration and policy design. Inclusivity was coded into every line. AI-driven captions in multiple languages, high-contrast visuals for readability, a safe mode for low bandwidth, no one excluded by language or hardware. When the campus opened, facilitators were nervous. Would teenagers take a virtual parliament seriously? Would the tech hold? Would the idea survive reality? It did, spectacularly. Within hours, the students forgot they were in VR. They whispered about treaty dates and peace accords. They argued over privacy laws and free speech. They paused mid-debate when one avatar raised a hand and asked, "How do we balance safety and truth?" For facilitators, these moments were gold. REDefine had designed the program around a simple belief: emotion is civic data. Every session included a check-in, a short pause where participants named what they were feeling and linked it to democratic values. Anger pointed to injustice. Confusion to complexity. Empathy to responsibility. The moment a participant said, "Now I understand what democracy feels like," the entire room went silent, even in VR. By connecting feeling to principle, the project built what we called democratic reflexes, the emotional agility to stay engaged even when uncomfortable. Portugal and Türkiye could not have been more different laboratories. In Portugal, democracy is memory. The Carnation Revolution still flowers in balconies each April. In Türkiye, democracy is aspiration, a system still being shaped and dreamed into being. Inside the campus, those perspectives met. The Portuguese brought reflection, the Turkish brought urgency. Their nightly debriefs became mini-summits, history meeting momentum. "We have the same values," one participant said, "but different accents." That line became our unofficial motto. When both groups entered the same virtual chamber, something rare happened. A European conversation that felt genuinely shared. They drafted a youth declaration for positive peace. They analyzed propaganda clips from their own media landscapes. They designed Vision 2050 boards that merged activism with art. One screen glowed with 3 words: "Empathy is our infrastructure." Even though we were in different countries, a student from Türkiye said, "It felt like we were in the same room, the avatars disappeared, only ideas remained." And watching them we realized, we hadn't just built a classroom, we'd built a continent. When the data came in, the numbers told the same story. Knowledge of EU institutions and values up 22 points. Civic confidence higher than ever. But the real proof was in behavior. Students who barely spoke in school were moderating debates. Shy participants stayed late in the virtual agora, comparing pledges. Empathy had become measurable, not as sentiment but as sustained attention. The campus followed a rhythm more musical than curricular. Memory, empathy for Europe's past. Process, mastery of democratic procedure. Participation, ownership of civic agency. Resilience, literacy against manipulation. Vision, imagination for the common future. Each day closed with reflection circles guided by the 4 F's. Facts, feelings, findings, futures. Learning became symphonic, each movement resolving what the last had stirred. Civic cafes, digital literacy workshops, environmental drives, all born from a week in VR. Within 3 weeks, more than 60 new initiatives were running. Democracy had left the headset. Behind the story lies a disciplined learning engine. The EU Democracy Campus follows a 5-day experiential arc, aligned with EU key competences, and the Council of Europe's framework for democratic culture. Each day blends action, emotion, and reflection. And the model runs on any device, classroom, hybrid, or fully virtual. Accessibility wasn't an add-on. It was the value being taught. But the most radical element was invisible: its emotional infrastructure. Each debate, simulation, and reflection loop cultivated empathy as a civic skill. Participants learned to stay present through discomfort, to listen instead of react. When conflict arose, youth workers asked, "What value is threatened? What would repair trust here?" By week's end, 94% of participants felt more confident in intercultural dialogue. Quieter students moderated. Outspoken ones paused to ask before rebutting. Diversity wasn't an obstacle to democratic learning. It was the method. From this experiment, REDefine and ISMA distilled 7 lessons for the next generation of civic learning. Democracy is learned by doing, not declaring. Emotion is information. Inclusion must be designed, not improvised. Technology becomes democratic only when guided by empathy. Intercultural dialogue builds resilience faster than lectures. Youth trust evidence they help create. And peace begins with practice. Every respectful disagreement is a rehearsal for peace. In an era of collapsing attention and rising cynicism, the EU Democracy Campus offers something radical: presence. Not the constant, hyper-connected presence of social media, but the slower, deliberate presence of shared thinking. It reminds us that democracy isn't a relic to be protected, it's a craft to be practiced. And practice needs space. That space now exists. In 3D.
Co-funded by the European Union. Views and opinions expressed are, however, those of the author, S, only, and do not necessarily reflect those of the European Union or the European Education and Culture Executive Agency, EACA. Neither the European Union nor EACA can be held responsible for them.